From Idaho's News Channel 7, this is Viewpoint.
Well, it is Sundays, so you know what that means. It is time for Viewpoint, Idaho's longest-running public affairs show, and best, by the way. We talk about change on Viewpoint a whole lot and how local leaders are trying to navigate that change. But friends, the city of Garden City looks at you talking about your change and laughs, because maybe no city in our area could be seeing more change than Garden City. Here to talk about it, the relatively new mayor of Garden City, but he's been there a long time, leading the way, Bill Jacobs. Mayor.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Well, let's start simply enough just by talking about you. You were GM actually at Far West Landscape and Garden Center.
Correct.
Now you're the mayor of Garden City. Coincidence? How did that prepare you for this?
Well, Garden, from the Garden Center to Garden City, right? I've had people, tell me that. So I was a general manager at Far West Garden Center, and so in my background of owning businesses and working for HP and other technology companies has really been general management, and that's what being mayor really is. It's managing the city, managing the budget, managing the people, driving the strategy. And so I think having that experience as a general manager and a business owner, really prepared me to be mayor. And so I feel comfortable in the spot. And so it's more, for me, it's more like I'm just learning a new organization to run. And I did have familiarity with it, of course, having been on council. So, I look at it as a continuation of my business experience.
You've been on council for a long time, lived there for a long time, but you actually grew up kind of all over the place.
I did. So my younger years, kind of my elementary, pre-teens, I was overseas. I actually, when I was 4, we moved to Caracas, Venezuela.
Oh, wow.
And so we lived there for 4 years. Then after that, we lived in Mexico City in Mexico.
Wow.
And then I lived there until I was about 13. So I really didn't move to the United States that I remember. So all my formative years were overseas until I was 13. And so I went through 6th grade overseas, and then we moved to Seattle, and that's where I went to high school, and I went to the University of Washington. And so when people ask me kind of where I'm from, I typically say Seattle, but my early years were overseas in Latin America.
What did you learn about yourself or just about the world in Latin America? It seems like that's very different from, say, Garden City, Idaho.
Well, it really is, and I think having lived overseas, it gives me perspective because I understand how different cultures live, right? And Mexico is pretty diverse in terms of demographics and economic, profile. I guess I'd word it that way. And I had to integrate. I have a lot of Mexican friends, and so it really allowed me to learn how to adapt. And so when I came back to the States, it was interesting, running around with my American friends. They just didn't really have any perspective besides kind of their neighborhood versus I had traveled around and in different countries. And so I'm very comfortable with other cultures. I really enjoy. So when I travel, I love going to Mexico. I'm very comfortable around other cultures and get along with them well. And I think part of that is having grown up overseas, to kind of teach me that because, you're integrated with people from all over the world.
Do you think that helps you in your current role as mayor to have some perspective on all the different folks living in your city?
Well, I think it really does. And so when you're talking to someone who's Hispanic, it's like, okay, I speak the language, having lived overseas, and so I can relate to them on a personal level, and having lived in different cultures and traveled extensively in my business career, I think it's really prepared me to kind of understand the issues, or it helps me think about things that otherwise I might not even be aware of, when I'm making decisions or when I have to, contemplate whether it's policy or just how I'm going to communicate with somebody. It really helped me be more comfortable in those situations.
Yeah. You went to college in Seattle and California. I won't tell anyone about the California thing.
It was a short stint. I was only there about 10 years.
Lay off, everybody. 10 years. Never mind.
I got a job transfer there, and now I'm back. Yeah.
No, it's fine. Yeah. People won't admit it. A lot of former Californians here in the area.
Yeah, I get it.
You're also global logistics manager there at HP. Mm-hmm. Wow, sounds impressive.
Well, and so, that's where I really like that job too, because that role was a worldwide job where I had to integrate programs with different regions of Hewlett-Packard. So Hewlett-Packard's, broken up by EMEA, which is Europe, Middle East and Asia, and Africa and Latin America. And so as the coordinator there, I got to interact with all those different regions. And I think having my background of living overseas, I really related well with these different managers from different countries, to kind of get the work done. And so it allowed me to travel to those areas, but then also I think, I fit in well with them, having understand, just a different perspective, having lived overseas.
Well, and to continue that theme, you're a bit of a Renaissance man. Besides Hewlett-Packard, also worked at Mark Monitor. You owned Alloway Lighting. As we said, lived in Latin America for a number of years. You talk about that business experience. It seems like also really a varied business experience. Why do you think that was? What was calling you or pulling you in different directions?
Well, I mean, some of it is I've never been one to be afraid to try new challenges, and for instance, with Alloway, I always wanted to own my own business, and so that opportunity came up, and so I did that, and I like small businesses, and so Far West was a great fit there. I wanted to get in technology, and so I worked at Hewlett-Packard and Mark Monitor, and I've never been afraid to try new challenges and opportunities that came towards me. I was confident that I could do the work, and really having that different big company, small company, allowed me to integrate with different cultures, I think prepares you for any leadership role, and because I think your communities hopefully are diverse, and I think there's some communities, I think, in Idaho that aren't as diverse, but Garden City certainly is. And so we're very blue, for instance, and we have a lot of trades that are in Garden City, and a lot of workforce, work and people, I guess I would say that. And so it's great to have that experience of having owned a small company that dealt with the trades, so I understand that work. And so it's actually exciting to have that diversity and be able to deal with it every day.
Well, you talked about Garden City. What called you then from the business world to public service?
Well, I'll put the blame squarely on Jeff Souza, who was a former council member. And so he was retiring from council. He had been there 16 years, and so he had asked me to take his place. And initially I said no, because it was kind of during that COVID where people were doxing and people were picketing people's houses and things. And I was like, why would I want to be involved in that? But I also give credit to my wife's family. My wife, Kristen, her dad was a mayor and a legislator in the state of Washington, and very much a service-oriented family. And so my family wasn't as much, but their family really is. I mean, he was a legislator, he was a two-term mayor in Wenatchee, Washington. And so having that influence, it gave me the confidence. And then her having that experience of her father, really, she had my back, right? And so she encouraged me to run. And so then once I kind of talked to Jeff a lot, talked to the community, I felt, when I look at these, whether to run for office, I kind of look at three things. I look at, is the timing right? Do I have the time to actually do the work and be in there? Two, do I understand what the work is? And so I talked to Jeff a lot about what the work was, and this goes the same thing for mayor. And then do I have the skill set to do the work? And I felt I did. And so when I answered yes to those three questions, then that's when I decided to run for office. If I were to say no to any one of those, I probably shouldn't run. But I said yes to all three, and so here I am as council and mayor.
And as mayor now, and in your time there, sort of living in around this area, you've seen a lot of changes to Garden City, especially these past couple decades. What do you think are some of the biggest changes to that community?
Well, I think the biggest changes that we're seeing are what's happening starting kind of on the east end, right? We have the waterfront district, which is really built out. That's where, the wineries and breweries and Rosa's and Push and Pour is, and the Riverside Hotel, and we've got a lot of other great businesses down there. We have the art district down there, the Live, Work, Create art district, and that really development started there. And then it started spreading. We now have the boardwalk on Veterans, which is a really nice development right on the river. We're starting to see townhomes and different developments come up and down Adam Street and these different developments. And I think what has happened is the development community has realized that Garden City is in the heart of the valley.
Yeah.
We're close to everything.
Yeah.
And, people really don't want to commute from, maybe, Star or Eagle or Middleton, and they want to live closer to Boise. They want to live close to the airport. They want to live close to Meridian. And so Garden City really is in the heart of that. And if you live in Garden City, you're close to everything. And then the Greenbelt runs right through the city. And I think, people didn't realize how much of a treasure the Greenbelt is and how vital it is to Garden City. And so once there was development along the Greenbelt, everybody in Garden City, I tell people, can walk to the Greenbelt. And we're the only jurisdiction on the Greenbelt where everybody in the city has ready access to the Greenbelt within walking distance. And so, we really try to prioritize the Greenbelt in terms of safety and development along the Greenbelt because we want that to be a focal point of the city. And so Garden City got discovered from a location perspective, and then I think our code and our city staff has been fantastic, to promote that. And you're seeing waterfront type districts. You've seen the boardwalk. You've seen some of these really nice developments pop up in Garden City, and it's just kind of turned over the city in terms of what it used to be to what it is today. And I think people now really like living in Garden City. And they like living in the GC, as we like to say, right? That's kind of the moniker I hear, right?
All that being said, does that river development make flood control a little more complicated for you?
Well, the flood control issue is kind of managed by FEMA, right? And so we do whatever their rules that require. But I think, the management of flood control, for instance, can be an inhibitor to development because FEMA may require a lot of flood control issues, which makes it more expensive to develop. And so we're currently working, with the Corr and with FEMA to try to get our map revised so less of the city is in the floodplain, and so that we can make development less expensive. And then I think also, when it comes to flood, we have 3 dams, 3 reservoirs, and I think they do a fantastic job of controlling the water flow and things like that. And so I think the risk of flooding is pretty low. And so as development has happened, they've had to build up along that, to manage under current rules. But we're hoping that they revise that floodplain to make it a little less expensive to develop in Garden City, and that floodplain gets revised. But it's something that currently, development has to take into account whether they're in the floodplain or not, and then our code requires them to adhere to FEMA standards. So.
You talked about sort of the face of Garden City changing. You had talked about it being very economically diverse. It used to be.
That's a great word for it. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, you can take that. I'll let you have it. Just pay me a quarter. When I was growing up, not to age myself, in the 90s, there was maybe less economic diversity. It was pretty much all working class. A lot of mobile home parks there. With this all, I don't want to call it bouginess, but a little bit of that, right? Moving in on the east side of town there. Some people or maybe feel like they can't afford this anymore. They can't afford to be in Garden City anymore. They're being pushed out of your city. How can you guarantee that there's sort of a place for everybody there?
Can't guarantee it, right? So we can't by code say that must be multi-income housing by code. And so, but we can encourage is that type of development. And when you do development, some people do get displaced. And so my goal as mayor is to have a variety of housing that is good for all income levels. And I think the city has done a really good job. So where our code is very flexible. Neighborhood Works has come into the city and has multiple developments in Garden City that that allow people to get into home ownership first time in an affordable manner. And I think if you were to talk to Neighborhood Works, they'd probably say Garden City is at the forefront of any city in Idaho with their code and allowing for that. Right now, the land prices are making it expensive to do that, but it's not the city code. And so I think what I'd like to do is, because we're in the center of the valley, and really what we're going to do is going to be a housing environment, for people, that we continue to look at our code to make it at least available to developers, and then encourage developers that focus on multi-income housing to come into the city. Now, we can't force them to do that, but what we can do is try to do everything as a city to make it easier for them to build that type of housing. And my personal feeling is from a a healthy city perspective, we need to have a variety and a diversity because I think it makes for a great city. And so, we recently applied for an opportunity zone, and if Governor Little honors us by selecting Garden City as one of the tracks, my message is how can we build a diversity of housing now that we have a potential engine to finance it.
Mayor, thank you. And we're going to talk about one of the big positive changes you've seen recently in Garden City, a certain soccer team, and one of the more negative changes as well, traffic, although everybody's dealing with that. That's next year on Viewpoint. Welcome back to Viewpoint. We are talking about one of the most dynamic cities in the area, Garden City, and we're talking to the mayor of that city, Bill Jacobs. Mayor, thank you for staying through the break and not running off. I appreciate it. So we talked about some of the huge changes Garden City has seen in the past few years. One of the big positives is AC Boise.
Yes.
Plays right there in the
Yes.
heart of the city. What an experience it is to see those matches. Went to my first one here just recently. That is awesome. How big is that for Garden City?
It's in the county, right? So it's not in our jurisdiction, but it is huge for the city, right? And I really, so all of our businesses really benefit from the AC Boise, which is fantastic. All the games are sold out. If anybody hasn't been there, they should go. We have a free shuttle that takes people to the games, and so that shuttle stops at Garden City businesses and then takes people to the game for free and then can return them. And so we really look at it as a great economic engine for people to visit and experience our restaurants and our breweries and our wineries and the art district, and then go to the game. And it's also right on the Greenbelt. So if you happen to be on the Greenbelt during a game, you'll see bike traffic and pedestrian traffic significantly increase as people go to the game. And I think that's going to increase once the park opens up, Expo Park. And so it's fantastic. And, we take I guess we don't take credit for the soccer game, but we like to say that it really is in kind of Garden City, and the county and the city really benefit, and hats off for the commissioners and the AC Boise team for really pulling off something fantastic and turning in that old horse grandstands into something that is really cool. And if people haven't been there to see it and they remember what the grandstands were like before, it's a remarkable makeover, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and what an incredible way to turn kind of a negative, rundown, abandoned horse track into a major positive, another way to draw people.
Yeah, it's a classic example of good redevelopment, I would say. And that's what we'd like to see in Garden City is we don't have any greenfield. You had mentioned earlier, we can't grow wide, we can only go up or it's redeveloped, and that's a perfect example of great redevelopment.
Should you be called AC Garden City, even though AC Boise is technically on even Ada County land, so maybe AC Ada County, ACAC? I don't know.
Well, they do it because they know it's a national team and they travel all over the country. And if you go to, another state,
Tennessee or whatever,
they're not going to know what Garden City is, but they do know what Boise is. But I am going to try to convince them, to make their logo is a little lightning bolt, and so maybe an ACGC, shirt with the lightning bolt in the middle, which is what if you're an old, headbanger, from the 70s and 80s, it fits right in with ACDC.
ACGC.
There we go. So I got to convince Brad to do something like that.
You are a business guy. Already thinking about branding.
Yeah, so I'd like to see a hat or something like that, and that would be pretty cool.
You talked about that park coming as well, right next to that stadium as well. That's also, again, on county property, but it's literally totally surrounded by Garden City. So that's got to be a huge draw for you as well.
Well, it's huge. So, hats off to the commissioners for voting to get that in, right? And it is going to be a huge community resource that Garden City benefits the most from.
Right.
It's right in the heart of the city. It's 50 acres. It's world-class park. I got to tour it about a month ago. It's just going to bring more people, to Garden City and the valley, and so. It's going to be along the lines. We've got some great parks in the area with Julia Davis and Catherine Albertsons and Morrison Park, and now we have the Expo Park, which is going to be fantastic. And so the fact that we get that world-class park in the middle of our city is going to benefit everybody, all the residents, and like I said, I toured it, and it's going to be fantastic. I can't wait for it to open in October. It's going to be fantastic.
Boy, that is awesome. We sort of talked about the fact that you are surrounded totally by the city of Boise. In that way, you can't sprawl. A lot of cities are saying, like, we can't afford to sprawl anymore to build out all that infrastructure. You literally cannot sprawl. You have nowhere to go. So you're going up. But what does that mean for your relationship with, say, the city of Boise, ACHD, the county, all that? How important are those relationships?
Well, I think, any city has to get along with its neighbors and the agencies that serve it. And so I think we have a great relationship. ITD has an office in Garden City, and so we have a great relationship with them. ACHD obviously takes care of our roads. And so, we really need to have a good relationship with them because they help us with development of sidewalks and our street maintenance and things like that. The county owns the fairgrounds, and so we want to make sure that we have joint, visibility to what's happening at the fairgrounds, and our police department is there if needed to help support any response times, even though it's controlled by the county. And so we really have to work closely with them, and we have a great relationship with all of them, and I think that's just key for any city. In terms of Boise, we share a bridge that goes over to Esther Simplot Park. We're on their sewer, wastewater system, and so as we develop and grow, we're going to have to work with Boise to make sure that load can be handled. And you got to get along, and you got to make sure that everybody's on the same page as you develop. But I think everybody's on the same page. Everybody wants the same good outcomes, and so I'm really positive that we can support the continued growth in Garden City, which is going to come over the next decade or two.
About a minute here. If there was one main complaint for people in Garden City or trying to drive through Garden City, it's that traffic. That's ACHD's purview. But is there something the city can do to help with that?
Well, not really. I mean, even it's ITD and ACHD, so ITD manages Chittenden and Glenwood. And really, the traffic is a result of growth in the valley, right? And so about 80% of the people that come down Chittenden Boulevard don't live in Garden City.
Right.
I can't control, Meridian, Stars, and Eagles growth, the people that transit through. What we really try to do is make it safe. People know not to speed through Garden City on Chittenden Boulevard. They will get ticketed. We try to work on, ITD does a good job of traffic flow, and I think so does ACHD. We've got some choke points that we're working with the county, with ACHD on, and that's really all you can do. But traffic all over the valley is a result of just how popular the valley is, and really, I think, trying to manage that the best way can is important. We obviously need transportation system in the valley, which we don't have. And so those type of things need to happen.
Real quick, before I let you go, I have this thing where I'm asking mayors of cities what their people are called. People from Boise, Boiseans, what are people from Garden City called?
Well, I was thinking about that because Boiseans is the only one I know of all the cities in the area. I mean, I've never heard of an Eagle Light or a Meridian Light or a Kuna Light. So we just, like I said, we like to say we living in GC. So people refer to we living in GC. So where are you from? We're from the GC, right? And so that's what people say.
Sounds pretty hip too.
And I like it. And people like to say that they live in Garden City, and it's no diss to Boise, but I think. Years ago, if you asked them, they'd say they live in Boise. Now they say they live in Garden City, which is exactly what we want.
Mayor Jacobs, thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate the time.
No, appreciate you. We'll wrap up Viewpoint after this.